President Trump using his pardon power today for 11 convicted individuals, including top Republicans, a public official convicted of abusing his power, and a billionaire convicted of 98 counts of racketeering and fraud. Legal experts say the pardons are audacious in their blatant favoritism and political posturing. These are Trump pardons for the powerful, for the rich, for corrupt politicians, a use of the pardon power benefiting people who were literally convicted of these same offenses that Trump and his advisors have been accused of. And reporting tonight shows that's the point, to send a message, because as Trump prepared these pardons, he also discussed using his pardon power to commute the sentence of Roger Stone, which would keep his longtime advisor out of jail despite being convicted in the Mueller probe. That's according to the New York Times tonight. So as Trump's Justice Department faces one of its greatest controversies over cutting the recommended prison time for, of course, Mr. Stone, thousands of DOJ veterans calling on Barr to resign over it, Barr claiming that he basically objects only to Trump tweeting about that case. As all of that's happening, Donald Trump today makes this move, blatantly helping a politician convicted of bribery, the former Apprentice contestant, Rod Blagojevich, who was impeached and removed as governor and then convicted and jailed for corruption and bribery. That's important to keep in mind. Trump also now pardoning billionaire Michael Milken and a lobbyist convicted of obstruction and lying to authorities who was tied to powerhouse Republican Jack Abramoff. And if all of that were not clear enough right here, right now, with this breaking story, President Trump also made a point of using this power for someone who's not even in prison anymore, but who is tied to Trump lawyer Rudy Giuliani, who is, of course, currently under investigation by the same Justice Department, facing all this political pressure. This is the man Giuliani installed as the chief of the New York Police Department, Bernard Kerik, who went on to be Giuliani's business partner at a firm called Giuliani Kerik. All of that before a spectacular fall where he was convicted of tax fraud. And the charges against him are serious.
Rudolph Giuliani's former right-hand man was formally arraigned Friday on corruption charges. He accepted $255,000 in renovations to his home from a contractor, then tried to convince city regulators that the contractor was not connected to the mob and should be hired for city contracts.
Conspiracy, wire fraud, mail fraud, evading taxes on $500,000, lying to the IRS, lying on a loan application.
Bernard Kerik could be facing prison time after pleading guilty to 8 felonies. The former New York City police commissioner admitted Thursday he lied to the White House. He also admitted to lying about hiding income from the IRS and faking a charitable contribution.
We're showing you all of that news coverage from that time because this is very important. Under the law, those kind of charges, which, as you just heard, he ultimately pleaded guilty to many of them, they're considered especially serious when committed by the very people who are entrusted in our government to carry out the law, like a police chief or a governor or, yes, a president. In fact, as we were reporting last year on this case, the Blagojevich matter had evidence that matched the evidence against Trump, abusing office to extort a benefit, which is a crime even when the plot is unsuccessful. We reported that Trump was actually musing about the Blagojevich pardon of the governor there before the Ukraine plot was even exposed, raising the question of whether this is Trump trying to literally gut the impact of our anti-corruption federal laws before your very eyes, to claim that it's all maybe okay now, and that elected officials should just have unchecked power. That is how many experts viewed Donald Trump's pardon for Bush White House aide Scooter Libby. Remember that? That was now nearly 2 years ago, a case that mirrored Trump's own because Libby considered himself the target of an unfair prosecution, as the New York Times reported at the time. Other presidents have certainly faced criticism for wielding their pardon power, including Bill Clinton's pardon for fugitive financier Mark Rich, a pardon ultimately investigated by a DOJ official named James Comey, and, of course, those Republican pardons of Iran-Contra figures, also controversial. But what you're seeing here is President Trump breaking records and hitting a new low for the breakdown of justice in the pardon process. These are blatantly political and messaging pardons. They favor the rich and famous, very obviously so, and the president also succumbing to his well-known obsession on this weighty issue with celebrities, with television. And that brings me to another point here that I want you to know tonight. Giuliani ally Bernie Kerik was on Fox
I just pardoned Bernie Kerik
night, as was Blagojevich's family, who's also made the case on Fox for a pardon looking right through the camera.
I just pardoned Bernie Kerik, a man who's had many recommendations from a lot of good people.
Bernie Kerik is a former New York police commissioner.
People elected Rudy Giuliani because crime was at its highest.
I really rely on the recommendations of people that know them. We have commuted the sentence of Rod Blagojevich. I watched his wife on television.
What would be your pitch to pardoning your husband?
It allows the FBI and power-hungry, overzealous prosecutors like Patrick Fitzgerald, who prosecuted both my husband and Scooter Libby, to go after anyone that they don't like.
There was a prosecution by the same people, Comey, Fitzpatrick, the same group.
In this long-running debate in America right now over whether this president is totally clueless or brilliantly strategic or somewhere in between, the actions that impact his own interests, his own well-being, his own legal liability can often be the most telling. As we've reported, this novice to government, who has seemed so uninterested in filling so many federal positions, he has been laser-focused on the two prosecution offices with jurisdiction over him and his businesses, New York and Washington, personally meeting with candidates for those offices, including Preet Bharara, during the transition. And it's the Washington office where the DOJ removed one prosecutor and then saw 4 more resign over this treatment of, yes, Mr. Stone. It all comes back to him. And Donald Trump now says Mr. Stone is a candidate for a pardon. And a newly emboldened Mr. Trump claims he also wants to sue those 4 prosecutors involved in the Stone case. But this is what I mean about how you analyze which president we're seeing. Is Donald Trump just reacting to what's on television and who he remembers from those simpler days of Celebrity Apprentice? Or is he spending years building up towards pardoning his own people, the most controversial act even for Republicans, to normalize that with these pardons for political figures, from Sheriff Joe, his first pardon, to Bush aide Scooter Libby, to now Democratic Governor Blagojevich, other pardons for other Giuliani associates in cases that he ultimately needs as he gets closer and closer to potentially, if he needs to, pardon someone like Giuliani or convicts from the Mueller probe. This is serious as a heart attack. This is what Donald Trump ran on, turning the power and, yes, potential intimidation of law, of investigation, of prison into a political weapon against rivals. It is, of course, what he was also impeached over. And it's the same fact pattern that he was recently acquitted of by the Republican Senate. Now, for all of that cheery political talk about not taking Donald Trump literally, tonight is one of those nights where it's worth sitting up, paying attention, and listening very closely. You can see it in the open. You can judge it by the actions. The failure right now to take this president literally could be the largest mistake of all.
Crooked Hillary Clinton. Oh, she's crooked, folks. She's crooked as a $3 bill. Lock her up is right.
It's just awfully good that someone with the temperament of Donald Trump is not in charge of the law in our country.
Because you'd be in jail.
Who specifically are you accusing of treason?
If you look at Comey, if you look at McCabe, if you look at probably people higher than that. If they were honest about it, they'd start a major investigation into the Biden.
Hey, I'm Ari Melber from MSNBC. You can see more of our videos right here, or better yet, subscribe to our YouTube channel below. You could have been anywhere in the world, but you're here with us, and we appreciate that.